Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Happy Friday. I'm so excited because this is the week. It is the week that I officially start my summer holiday, mainly because I am going to be moving house. And at the time this episode airs, next week will be when I move house. So I'm getting very, very ready, not with anything practical like packing my stuff. I feel like at this point in time, I should have done loads, but haven't. And I just know the nature of my brain and my attitude towards moving is that probably 2 days before we move, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have to pack everything. And the only room that I'm responsible for is my office. So, as long as I've got that done, it doesn't matter, right? That's what I keep telling myself. We are very, very fortunate to have some incredible movers who will be doing the lion's share of the packing this time, which I'm just so excited about. I have moved every couple of years for a very, very long time because I come from a military family and obviously I married somebody in the military. So I'm very, very used to moving. But this time we found a local mover. Check me out, finding a local mover who can actually do all of the packing and like disassembly of our big furniture items and stuff. And then they'll move it. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. So fully expect on future podcast episodes after the move that I will be saying how amazing it was or not. Hopefully it will be, but you never know. It could all go horribly wrong at this point. But I'm very, very excited nonetheless because we are in the throes of summer and hopefully amazing weather and all of those good things. And actually, it is a good reminder for me to tell you now that the Expert Services Directory is open. We have had quite a few questions from people, so I will be putting together a little fact episode on what the Expert Services Directory is, and it will come into your earbuds very, very shortly. Now, we're going to do it as an additional episode, not as like this is a weekly episode or fortnightly episode of the podcast, because I think that would be a bit of a boring episode, but I do want to record a little fact sheet about it, if you will, so that if you are considering joining, then you absolutely can. Now, what I will say about the Expert Services Directory is this is a very, very exciting opportunity to benefit from all of the professional networks and relationships and databases that I've built over the last 18 years. So it is an absolutely incredible opportunity to see yourself and your services as a coach, consultant, or service provider in front of decision makers with real buying power across the UK. So if you are interested in generating leads, and I'm going to use the word passively, it's probably the only time that I will use that without being a little bit sick in my mouth. But it's the only time really that you're going to have the opportunity to generate passive leads. And what I mean by that is this is a directory. So it is monthly promotion to organizations and real decision makers with that buying power that is so, so important. But it's also completely searchable. So you're going to be picking up these leads without you having to do proactive outreach. Now, does that mean that it should entirely replace your proactive lead generation strategy? Of course not. You know that I'm all about that proactive outreach. But I am saying that if you're somebody who's selling to decision makers in the UK and you want more leads from the professional services, charities, tech or sports spaces, then you absolutely need to join, because these will bring in qualified inbound leads during those busy times where you're working on delivery or you're working on business development outside of your lead generation strategy, and you just don't have time. So it will bring in those quality, qualified leads from people who actually have the budget to pay you, rather than, unfortunately, junior decision makers who don't actually have enough sway internally to influence the buying decisions and power ahead. All right. So if you are interested in that, make sure you hit the link in the show notes and you can go and grab your space, which I'm very, very excited about. We've got really, really limited spots left for me to write solo promotion emails every quarter. So if you are interested in that level, make sure you go for Directory Plus, and it is all explained on the very, very helpful sales page for you. All right. So today's episode is about this idea of education and value. And it is, unfortunately for me, a real soapbox moment, because there used to be this school of thought for business owners. And, this was very, very prevalent in the B2C space. So people selling directly to consumers, a very, very prevalent school of thought that was you had to give value. And, I agree. Here I am. I've got a free podcast. It's got over 150 episodes. So, I believe in educating people. But as ever, with any good idea, sometimes it is taken too far. Sometimes it's taken in completely the wrong way. And it has been causing a lot of problems for people who are trying to sell business to business, so directly to companies or organizations. And that's because this school of thought was give value and then you'll just magically get clients, right? And it's so funny because what solopreneurs learn really, really quickly after doing this is that when you give lots and lots of free information, education, access to you all of the time for free, forever, you actually make zero money, or a lot less than you would like. And not only that, but people get really offended when you ask them to buy something, when you're like, hey, look, you've actually had tons and tons and tons of free value from us. And actually, that thing that you want now, that support with implementation, or, that set of 6 coaching sessions or whatever it is, actually, you would need to pay for that. People can get really offended. And so what happened was we started seeing this weird trend across the internet where people would berate people publicly for asking to be paid. They'd say, oh my gosh, this person had a free YouTube channel and now they're asking for Patreon donations. And how awful are they? Right? Not thinking this person has had a free YouTube channel for like 6 years on DIY and, maybe they just like to be bought a coffee every so often because they spend quite a lot of their time and energy doing it for free, Or we'd have people on the internet saying things like, oh my gosh, this coach is so out of integrity because they talk about the importance of giving value. And then I wanted free stuff from them and they said no, right? We've all seen these examples. And that made people really embarrassed. It publicly shamed people for selling. And that actually, surprisingly, doesn't work as well as you'd think for anyone's mindset around sales. And it also doesn't help practically because it makes people think selling is sleazy, selling is gross, selling is how you lose friends on the internet. And unfortunately, that thinking is really pervasive. And so it hasn't just stayed in the mindset of people who are selling directly to consumers. So if you previously used to only sell directly to consumers, you probably are thinking, oh gosh, yeah, I heard that. And it makes me feel really uncomfortable to sell transparently. Unfortunately, it doesn't just stay in that B2C realm. It is pervasive and it has come into the B2B world. And what I mean by that is we see a lot of really great coaches, consultants, service providers, meaning speakers and people who, run web design agencies or podcasting agencies or whatever that looks like. It means that those qualified, epic people who are genuine experts in their field, are spending a lot of time educating decision makers in organizations and not enough time selling. And that means that they are not making the money that they want. It means that they are not setting the boundaries around scopes of work. It means that they're doing and causing themselves some really major sales problems. Because this idea of give, and show credibility and demonstrate authority can be a really dangerous school of thought for people who are selling to corporates. It bleeds into over marketing because you don't want to have a sales conversation. It creates probably some unknown sales related issues around confidence and around pricing. And most importantly, it creates real revenue gaps in your business. So what I want to talk about today is why actually education is not the be all and end all of sales for your decision makers, and actually how it is starting to harm your sales process and what you need to watch out for as a result. Now, it's not a hugely long episode. There are only a few points, but I think it's interesting to know. And I would love, after this episode, to hear your thoughts on whether you have been too much of an Eddie or Ella educator and need to be a little bit more of a, I don't know, Sarah or Stephen seller. I really need to get some new name banks. Oh dear, laughing at my own jokes again. What's new? All right, so let's talk about this then. Now, I think in order to understand the issues, we have to break it down, because some of you might be listening to this episode and be like, but just, how can I get clients if they don't know, if they don't get any education on what I do or why it's necessary or all those things? And so I just want to clarify, this is not me saying you should never tell corporate clients what you do, or you should never say to them, oh, okay, look, the area I work in is quite complex. This is actually what it means. This is actually how it helps, etc., etc. What I mean is that we need to stop giving tons of free education that become problematic. So I mean not over marketing, i.e. showing up on LinkedIn every day, giving a value post or value piece of content so that hopefully the right decisions may or may not scroll their LinkedIn feed and see it. And I also mean from a practical perspective, not doing things like free consultancy, and being aware of and sensible about what clients or prospective clients need to pay for and what is actually a useful sales tool. Okay. Now, in sales, it's well known that we get certain things that we would call loss leading exercises. If you've been in the B2C space for a while, you'll hear people talking about lead magnets, which is this idea of the free information that you give in exchange for an email address from a decision maker. And then obviously you can put them into a sales cycle. It's important for me to caveat here with the fact that we all know that sales funnels don't work for business to business, specifically with organizations and companies. If you're selling to other solopreneurs and describing that as business to business, that's slightly different. But when it comes to the way that we're seeing individuals sell to companies, we're starting to see them try and load decision makers with tons and tons of information and education. So we've got people who are setting up YouTube channels. We've got people who are posting every day on LinkedIn. We've got people who are creating podcasts for organizations. We've got people who are sending out weekly newsletters. We've got people who are putting decision makers into their own little quizzes and then sending them a 7-part email sequence to try and educate them on why their HR division should care about reducing stress in their employees, right? We have all these things. And do you know what they cause? Overwhelm. Think about it. If you've ever worked in a corporate job, do you know what you're not doing every day? Consuming an hour-long webinar, and then reading every part of a 7-part sales sequence. Now, don't get me wrong. These things absolutely work for individuals. They do, right? When you're selling directly to consumers, these things work. But when you're selling to busy decision makers who are buying based on logic and commercial viability, return on investment, transformation that they actually want to achieve, these things do not. They overwhelm. And they can actually cause other issues for you as well. So let's talk about what these issues are so you can understand how some of this, even if you think, oh, Jess, I don't think that I am educating too much. Let's talk about some of the symptoms that you might be seeing in your sales process so you can understand whether there are still areas that you can refine or whether there are areas that you can support decision makers differently. So the first main thing that we see for business owners who are trying this idea of giving value in the hope that decision makers will buy is giving free consultancy. And this is just not okay. All right. And people say this to me all the time. They're like, oh, Jess, but the organization, like they wanted to hear all of my ideas and exactly how it'd be tailored to them. And if I didn't give it to them, then I wouldn't have won the business. And honestly, if you're giving them all of your stuff and all of the tailoring, they're not going to buy from you anyway, because you're training them how to treat you. And you are training them that they don't need to pay you because you will just give them the free consultancy anyway. And unfortunately, we see this a lot because people are so ingrained in this methodology of, I need to give so much value and then they'll hire me. And that really isn't the way it works with organizations. Those decision makers will take as much information as you can give them, and they will, if you offer to analyze a report for them for free, they're not going to say no. They'll be like, great, that takes some of the pressure off my plate. And yet we hear small business owners complaining about this all the time. They'll say, it's not fair. I offered to do this thing for free for a company and they took me up on it, and then they didn't pay me. They didn't go on to buy from me. And I think to myself, well, of course they didn't, because you trained them not to. You trained them not to pay you. So we have to be very, very careful in how we give information to organizations. And I say to companies all the time, when I'm on sales calls and they say, oh, wow, that system sounds amazing. How would you tailor it? How would you tailor the plan to us? What curriculum would you, provide based on these exact metrics that this person is performing to? How would you make their performance improvement plan different from a sales perspective than the ones we're already giving? Now, it'd be really easy for me to turn around and say, oh, I do X, Y, and Z, and you should, look at this area and this area and this area. But I'm not responsible for them at that point. They're not a client of mine. And actually, it's not helpful for me to dig down into the granular of something before we even know if they're going to proceed with it. Right? It's also incredibly irresponsible because, one, they're not a contracted client. So if I give them information and then they don't have the skills, ability internally to deliver it without me, they can end up getting things really wrong. It can cause real issues. And it's also irresponsible because I have other corporate clients who are paying me for that consultancy, for that access to my brain, to ask those questions, to get my support and responses. They wouldn't feel great if I was giving it out for free all the time to everybody else, right? So I like to say, there is a difference between education and free consultancy. And the difference is education is explaining what you do and the commercial benefits of it. Free consultancy is how you are giving them the ability to apply that to themselves or their organization in that call. Right? And that's the difference. Education is, this is what we do. These are the commercial benefits that holds. Here are the commercial benefits that would be really useful for your organization based on where you're at, so that you can make a decision on whether or not you go forward with this project or whatever they're looking at. Free consulting is giving them all the ideas and things in the call that they think they can go away and apply themselves. And that's something that should be chargeable. It is not okay not to get paid for any value that you are bringing. Right? And we need to normalize that. We need to normalize that it's okay to say to organizations, look, this is such an interesting area. I think that you would really benefit from some consultancy around it, or some advice. I actually can run a consultancy session for you. It's a paid session so that we can go through those ideas and so that we can map it out properly with all of the right information. That's okay. Sometimes they'll be like, nope, don't want to do that. And I think a lot of us are so worried sometimes about the fact that a client might say no, or a prospective client might say no, that we avoid doing it. But actually, if they say no, brilliant, you've just saved yourself tons of time giving them the free advice, and then tons of time beating yourself up about the fact that you didn't get paid for it, right? So it's a win-win. The second thing that can be really problematic is that we inadvertently remove the problem or the pain that they're experiencing because you normalize it. right? So when we go into education mode and we talk about every organisation has a problem with their staff being burnt out at this time of year, that doesn't make them think, oh my gosh, organisations have such a problem. Like, we should fix that because our people are burning out and they're stressed and they're tired and that's not great. They go, oh, cool. Well, if everyone's, struggling with this at the minute, then no point changing anything because everyone's got the same issue, right? When we educate in that way, where we're actually normalizing something, what we're telling them is either don't bother solving it because there's no point because everyone's got that same issue, or we're making our expertise be diminished. We're saying, oh yeah, this is such an easy problem to solve. You just do it in-house, right? Because if everyone has the issue, and if you're giving them, all these LinkedIn posts and newsletters and whatever else you're giving them on how to solve the problem, well, guess what? They're like, great, we don't need to pay you. We'll just go and take your top 5 ways to reduce burnout in the workplace and we'll just implement it. And of course, you'll be listening to this as frustrated as I feel about it, right? Because you'll be like, but they can't just because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the capacity. Otherwise, they'd already be doing it. And I completely agree. I completely 100% wholeheartedly agree. But when we are educating constantly instead of selling, what we're doing is going, yeah, that's a totally normal problem. And yeah, it's so easy to fix. And yeah, you could probably do it yourself. That doesn't benefit you. Doesn't benefit you. It doesn't actually benefit them. Nobody gets paid. Nobody has the problem resolved. It doesn't feel good, right? So we have to be super, super careful that we're not inadvertently removing problems or normalizing them to the point that they feel like there's no point fixing them. Yeah? Now, this idea of education, and to be clear, I've said a couple of times on this episode, I'm conscious of it, LinkedIn posts or newsletters or whatever. It's not to say that these things are a problem in of themselves. It's to say that the way you're using them is problematic. Creating content for organizations like top 5 ways to reduce burnout in your staff, it is problematic content because it does normalize it, because it does make them think they can do it in-house, because it directly takes them away from thinking, oh, here's this amazing person who could absolutely support us to reduce burnout in our key decision makers and influencers or whatever. It just makes them think, oh yeah, cool, well, something for HR to give a crack at, or something for the wellbeing team to have a bit of a look at, and they'll pass on the content, but they won't hire you. So it's not, it's not that the medium or the content medium that you're choosing that's problematic. It's the content you're creating and the fact that you're educating, not selling, that is the real issue here, And this does cause these other sales specific issues, like undercharging. Because obviously when we're not winning lots of business, what happens is every single proposal we put together, that we don't win, we go, oh gosh, it was probably the price. The price is probably too high. We don't think, oh, we actually normalized the issue to the point they didn't want to solve it. Or, oh, we actually gave them so much free consultancy that they didn't need to buy from us. Right? So what happens is we lose business, we lose proposals that we thought we would win in some cases, and we start thinking it must be the price. So we put the price down. We start undercharging, right? Because we feel less confident. And actually, because we're desperate to win more business, because we're desperate for revenue, because we're panicking, right? So we undercharge. And then even if we win the business, we feel resentful because we're like, oh gosh, now I've got all of this work to do and I've only been paid X. And it's frustrating. Yeah. It leads into low sales confidence generally because you aren't closing deals. So when we're not closing deals, we start thinking, oh, everything that we're doing must be wrong. Right? And that's when we start to hear these kind of hypotheses type situations. Oh, I just need more leads. Oh, I just need better leads. Oh, I just need to get leads that are on sales calls that have budget. Right? It gives us that low sales confidence. So instead of us taking ownership and saying, okay, well, actually, I've been running these sales calls, but I haven't been getting the critical information I need to write a coherent proposal. so I should start asking those questions. Instead we blame the other parties. They just weren't a good enough lead. They just didn't tell me what their budget was. And then they said it was too expensive, and we make out like it's their fault, but it isn't. It's us, it's our low sales confidence, which means that we start to go awry on our sales processes. Instead of using best practice sales processes, instead of following the process to the letter, we start cutting corners. We start being so worried about getting a no that we do everything we possibly can to protect that opportunity. Yeah. So we don't ask the hard questions. We don't ask them, about their expected budget and, actually press upon them that we need that information to be able to put together a decent solution for them, right? Instead, we're like, oh no, we don't want to do that because we don't really remember how to ask the budget question or push back on it in a consultative way. And we don't want people to think we're just, using them to make loads of money. So I'll just stop asking about it. We forget to ask the other critical pieces of information that we need. We start avoiding following up opportunities. We start avoiding following up proposals. We start avoiding, enforcing our boundaries around payment terms because we're so desperate. We're so lacking in sales confidence that we don't want to do anything wrong. And in not wanting to do anything wrong, we also don't get anything right. Yeah. And it also creates slower close rates, much slower close rates, because if we're doing lots and lots of education and somebody's getting lots of free consultancy out of us, or they're getting lots of opportunities to pick our brains as a decision maker, even when they get to the point where they're like, oh yeah, well, maybe we should do something with you, the process goes much, much more slowly because they will naturally expect that some pieces, they're like, oh, well, we don't have to buy from you because we could just ask you this question again. We could just get this information from you again. And that slows the process down exponentially because they're so used to getting things for free from us. Yeah. They will also be much happier to go and benchmark because even though you've given them all this amazing information, they're not seeing you as the expert anymore. They're not seeing you as the person that gave them clarity on the problem that their organization is having and the critical commercial reasons that they should be solving it. They're just like, oh, yeah, cool. Well, Jess gave me some really interesting information. Let's go and find 3 or 4 companies and see which can implement the exact plan that she gave us cheapest. Right? And you might think, oh my gosh, that's awful and how lacking in integrity. But honestly, this is the job for these people. This is their job. Their job is to be the best buyer, the most responsible buyer for their organization. So if you've already given them a load of free consultancy or a load of free education, but you're the most expensive, they're not going to pay you the premium just because you gave them the education, right? They're going to go, oh, wow, if it's that simple to do, and if you've given us this amazing plan that was totally custom, why shouldn't we go and see who else can provide it and at what price, right? Education does not increase your value in the market. Clarity does. And so when we talk about this sales process, the difference between education and selling is your sales process, the process of your lead generation, the process behind your sales calls, the structure that you run them with, the questions that you ask. They are designed to give somebody clarity and impetus to do something or not do something. A good sales process is helping somebody to make a decision, not getting a yes. And the problem with education and this idea of constant education so that we can prove value is that all it's doing is, it's increasing some of your credibility. Maybe it's helping give you more authority in the market because people see you speaking about it, but you're always doing it for free. It's not giving them clarity or commercial reasons to change the way they're doing things. And so that means that until somebody pops up and puts them through a sales process that makes them understand that, they don't change, they don't buy, and they don't pay you, right? And that is the crux of the matter. So I want you to think about where you're spending your time in your sales process. Is it on constant education that is meaning that you're giving information all the time, that you're trying to demonstrate credibility and authority, that you're showing how much you know and nobody's buying? Or is it that you are starting to and want to focus more on selling, on giving them that clarity and understanding? Oh my gosh, yeah, we didn't realize that these symptoms in our team, in our workplace, were caused by this problem. And we didn't realize how commercially critical that was and the consequences that we would experience if we don't do anything about it. We must buy immediately. It's two very different things. Doesn't mean that you're not sharing similar information, doesn't mean that you are trying to be sleazy or pushy or a hard sell, but it means that you focus on very different things. Rather than just educating them on what it is and how it helps and the top 5 ways they can do X and whatever, it's helping them to understand the clear consequences, helping them to build the business case commercially for doing or not doing something. They're very, very different. Okay, so that is my little summer reminder to you before you are putting together all of your summer content, which I'm sure you will all be doing soon if you haven't already, to not fall into that friend zone trap, right? Don't start yourself in September with lower sales confidence, feeling like you need to undercharge, having deals that just take forever to close. Instead, really rein back on the education piece, really focus on the clarity piece and the commercially viable piece for them. All right. And if you do want that steady stream of leads coming in over the next 12 months, then please remember that the Expert Services Directory is here. It is open and officially goes live out to decision makers on September the 1st, which I'm super, super excited about. We have been working away just rapidly with our decision maker user groups from organisations across professional services, technology, charities and sports across the UK. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So if you are going to join the directory, please make sure you grab your space because they are limited. We have 10 spots in each specialism for each location. So if you are somebody who knows that you definitely want to be in that communications specialism in London, or you want to be somebody who is in the health and well-being specialism for East Anglia, like whatever that looks like, you need to get yourself in because once those spots are gone, they are gone until next year and it will then be on a drop-in, drop-out basis and the prices will not be the same. So if you are interested in that, go and take a look at the sales page. The link is in the show notes for you and I will see you in the next episode.